And it was very, very, very scary because we were burning around $2 million a month. Venture capital had dried up. We were into a lease in San Jose that was costing us $200,000 a month. A 10-year lease. Yeah. Wow. Not a good idea. Yeah, thank our VCs for that one. They were like, everyone wants real estate in San Jose. Just sign a long-term lease. You've got the money. So a lot of bad decisions. We made a lot of mistakes along the way. And it was very, very painful. Firing friends sucks. I personally recruited half of the company at Zero Knowledge, personally. I used to go onto campuses, meet students, convince them to come back to Canada who were destined for Silicon Valley. And some of them picked up, moved to Montreal, set up their house, set up their family, and we had to say, sorry, you're out of a job 3-4 months later. It is one of the hardest things you're able to do as an entrepreneur, is look a friend or a valued employee in the eye and have to let them go through no fault of their own. But it's part of the job. It's what's necessary to do. So we went through that, very, very painful. The whole time we're trying to remake ourselves, heal ourselves, and kind of, it's like doing open heart surgery while you're reading the medical textbook at the same time. It's painful, it's confusing, but it is something you just kind of figure out. And this is just the thing about entrepreneurship, is you get in there and you figure it out. And we turned it into a great success. Today, Zero Knowledge now called Radio Point. Same company. Funny little twist on the story. After raising $75 million in venture capital, today we own the company outright, me and my co-founders again. Last summer we bought back the company from VCs, and we own it 100%. Today, Radio Point is one of Canada's fastest growing software companies. We do around $45 million in revenue, over $20 million in profit. We are growing again, doing incredibly well. We have top-tier partners, Verizon, Bell South, and we took our security products and we figured out a way to make it work. We're now the leading provider of security solutions to ISPs around the world. So this was a wild, up and down roller coaster, and it's kind of the 10-year overnight success. It was 1997 when I started Zero Knowledge with my brother and father. Today they still run it. I left a couple years ago, 2 years ago now, to just start doing more angel investing and startup work. But a huge amount of people joined into Zero Knowledge, bought into it. As painful as it was, today I've tracked 12 startups that are run by former Zero Knowledge employees. This is what Canada needs. We need to start creating more spin-offs. So one of the things we did at Zero Knowledge is we had Zero Knowledge University, which was a 2-week program where we trained all the employees on everything about our business, everything. We actually had one full day on Startup University where we would teach venture financing. We would teach how to think like an entrepreneur, because we wanted our employees to act and behave like entrepreneurs. We taught about term sheets. We taught about valuations. And I think that's in part what contributed to a lot of our employees going off and starting new companies, because we wanted to be a fast-moving entrepreneurial shop, and we instilled and taught that in our culture. And that ended up creating other spin-offs. So, today at COA, as Simon mentioned, can't really say much about COA. This is kind of my passion. This is what I'm working on today. It started with a simple question. What if playing games could make the world a better place? And you'll be hearing more about this. We're playing around with some cool ideas about real-world gaming, reality-based gaming, massively multiplayer games, and philanthropy, and making the world a better place. So hopefully you'll be hearing more about that soon. And we're going to talk about one other thing, conscious of my time. One of the projects I got involved in is a company called Standout Jobs, and I think this is an important lesson. Standout Jobs was started out of the bar camp community. One of the organizers of Montreal Bar Camp approached me afterwards, and he came and said, listen, I've heard your story. I've been working at a company for 5 years. I'm a U of T graduate. I personally saved up enough money to pay myself for 1 year, and I'd like to apprentice with you. I'd like to learn how to do a startup, and I'll pay my own way. I was so blown over by this chutzpah, and I said, you've got everything you need to be an entrepreneur. You're ready to take the plunge, you're ready to take the risk, you're ready to jump in. So I said, find a co-founder, find a business idea, come back and I'll fund you. I didn't even care what it was at the time. I said, I'll help advise you, but let's get started. So they started talking about one of the problems, and one of the reasons he was involved in Barcamp is he couldn't find great startup jobs. He couldn't find jobs with great startup companies. He had gone to Paul Graham's Y Combinator school. He was looking everywhere, trying to figure out a great way to get involved in a startup. But he had that what the fuck attitude that he was willing to leave his job and pay himself just to give it a try. So I said, guys, listen, I had problems finding startup employees. Sounds like a great idea for a startup. I've done a lot of recruiting, so we created Standout Jobs. They left their jobs in January. He found a co-founder. They were great. I gave them some seed capital to get started. Within 6 months, we've raised $2 million in venture capital. They launched a demo this year, and they are a very fast-moving, great company out of Montreal, one of the top Ruby shops in Montreal, and they are moving really, really fast to build a great opportunity in the online hiring space. And so, you know, this is what I think we need to see more of. So when I say why startups, the whole idea of cost, effort, and risk has totally changed. Anyone who's here, I think, knows this. Paul Graham, Y Combinator, Ruby, Python, Django, you name it. The tools, the infrastructure, the cost, hosting, the risk and the cost have dropped. These used to be barriers to being able to create your own startup. Okay, we've heard the Reddit stories. We've heard all these companies who are able to do it with small amounts of capital. No one is more ideally suited to do that than students. You guys can afford to eat on ramen because you've already been doing it, right? You can make choices in your life. You know, you start taking someone who has cars, families, obligations, and all of a sudden their risk reward is so much higher. And so no other time than when you're a young student and you have that kind of freedom, I believe, is it the best opportunity and the best chance to either start a startup or join a startup so that you can learn about what it's going to take to explore your own dreams. So when you're looking at that, I have to throw this dig in. I know I'm in rim country, and my BlackBerry may blow up after this, but
something you arrived on?
yes. You have to make your choices intelligently. Not all tech companies are startups, okay? There's a lot of big companies where your ability to affect change, and your ability to touch a number of different things, from shipping real code to sitting in on product strategy meetings, just isn't there because they are large organizations. Now, you do get benefit. You see how some of the big professional things work and operate, but if your goal is to be in the startup space, I'd much rather hire someone who's been part of 2 failed startups, either on their own or otherwise, than someone who spent 2 or 3 years working at Microsoft. So that may be a great place to go in your career, and I think it is a lot of great opportunities in Google, Microsoft, all the big companies. But if you're into startups, there's no better time to do it at this point. So one of the things that has also changed is we have an incredibly rich landscape for startups. All across Canada, and I've been to almost all of them. The only one I haven't been to is yet Vancouver, but Calgary, bar camps, demo camps, startup camps. There are many organizations who are now focusing and trying to bring out the resources to help young entrepreneurs. So there's a community around you that is willing to invest and help you get launched. We're seeing more angel investments, more angel groups in Canada. So the opportunity landscape is incredibly supportive and very rich.